in E.C.H.O framework is collaboration. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Although I think framework is kind of a big word for for a mere acronym to help me remember. But what I like about collaboration, this again is one of those obvious things that when you do KM projects is that you probably need to reach out to a large group of stakeholders. But what I've noticed when it comes to design thinking, usually design thinking is a little bit more creative in terms of the people you collaborate with, and there could be some unexpected stakeholders that you involve. They could be kids, they could be people that are not part of the traditional HR, IT, or executives as usually happens in KM. So I think the collaboration is very important, and the question of when you have your stakeholder map when you're doing a KM project, to make sure that ask yourself the question is are there others that could have an interesting view, maybe outside of the organization, that could help. And it also leads to the fact that it should facilitate connections. So the more that people connect within organizations, the higher the chance that interesting solutions pop up. And I remember in that sense, and sometimes they can be very simple solutions. One anecdote pops up in my head. I organized a large knowledge sharing event in Europe. This was for directors of immigration services across all European countries, and they all came to, I believe it was Rotterdam. And one thing we did, it sounds very old school, but when they arrived, we asked for their business card in the morning, and the same afternoon we had scanned them in. We had printed little booklets with all their business cards of all the people that were attending the conference. And I'm saying it's old school because we have LinkedIn. We have a lot of ways that digitally you can now find people. But they loved it because, first of all, the whole networking part of the event was probably more important to them than the actual things that they were looking at, the lectures they were listening to. Also, they had all the actual business cards, so they didn't have to chase people. Yeah. And I heard later on, months later, that this booklet was one of the few things that was on all these directors' desks across Europe, because it was so easy to use, and it was. But it's just a funny little example of something that could add a lot of value you may not have thought of, but it does support the connectivity of people. Yeah. I think that was one example that, and there are other examples where we're kind of embedded. For example, take the example of libraries within, or maybe even archives within large organizations or institutions. Those are usually dusty places in basements and boring, etc. Now, one thing the World Bank has been trying to do is make that a place where people meet, where people can innovate, share, where they can talk. And because it's always been the kind of the epicenter of knowledge, because at least the offline knowledge, the tangible knowledge, but that could also be a space where you can facilitate collaboration and connections. A last example of how sometimes you have to look at other stakeholders was something I recently saw at someone presented at a conference, which was IBM, who looked at what do you call them, crosswalks. Yeah. And they said, how can we make crosswalks safer? And in the end, it was an IBM project. In the end, it was a kid who came up with the idea that why doesn't it light up, like the white bars? Why doesn't it light up when I just step on it? And so in Amsterdam, they did some tests where you saw this kid, tap on the crosswalk, and it lit up. And obviously, it's a lot safer because, especially at night, cars can see it. So I think, and that's what inspires me when it comes to collaboration and design thinking, is that you look way beyond your usual stakeholders to find solutions, and because you never know where they may come from. Yeah.
And not only that, the whole idea of collaboration is one of the big things that's come along with design thinking is this idea of testing with the user, or collaborating with the ultimate user. Just like you're talking about this little boy, he's had this thought, and you're collaborating with him to actually give him something that he really, really, really wants. And that's something that I think is really important. The idea of co-creation with users. and this is very much a part of the collaboration idea.
Yeah, and it seems so obvious, right, that you involve the end user, but in knowledge management, very often I still see that it's the end user is forgotten. You know, you need to check off a box because a taxonomy needs to be created, or a website needs to be launched, or that publication needs to be disseminated. But the more interesting question is someone reading that publication, and if so, more importantly, are they acting on the insights in that publication? So from that perspective, again, I think design thinking can really help knowledge management in involving the end user.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.